My name is Cynthia Kuiper from the company VPInstruments. I'm here today with Mauricio Uribe from the company CrowsNest from Chile. Hi Mauricio, how are you doing?
Fine, Cynthia, how are you?
I'm good. We had a great session last week where you hosted for VPInstruments a great webinar about compressed air audits. And today we're just going to talk about audits in general and see where our interview takes us. So my first question to you was, what is your main takeaway for your customers, when you talk about air audits?
Well, it's actually twofold. It's increased reliability, which is always very interesting, and also lower operation costs.
Okay.
That's the main takeaway. Operation costs is not only energy costs, it's not necessarily restricted to that, but also maintenance costs, not only from compressed air equipment, but also from points of use and equipment that could be could require less maintenance is the air if the air quality is better or if the air pressure is more controlled, things like that. Yeah, so in some reliability and lower costs.
Okay. And when you look at those costs, theory says in compressed air industry that you can save up to 20 to 50% of your compressed air consumption. How is this number working in reality?
Well, yeah, I have seen the 50%, but it actually depends on how bad the system is. But yeah, in general, you can say 20 to 35%. And you can see some plants that go to 10%. I mean, some plants that already have a very good practice, I mean, very good practices in place, or plants that waste too much. So all the way between 10 and 50%, but most of the plants are between 20 and 35.
And is there any common ground in when companies have, let's say, come close to the 50%?
Well, yeah, I mean, the simple answer is waste. But I have to qualify that. I mean, it depends on the type of applications that they have. How do they use the air? Sometimes they use high pressure air for low pressure applications, or any other kind of waste. But in general, that's it. Also, something that we have seen is plants that have a strong corporate culture where people have a sense of ownership. They fare much better than other plants. So
Okay, so it's also a people factor.
yes, there's a cultural factor as well that sometimes is very, very important. It depends on how people are in the plant and how long people have been in the plant, if they have received any training, because knowledge is also very important. Sometimes you see an application that wastes a lot of air, but the operator is not aware of that, and so he leaves the valve open and lets the air run.
Yeah. And in terms of the 10 to 50%, sounds nice, but if you quantify it in actual money, what are typical numbers that you come across in terms of actual savings?
Again, depends on the size of the plant. We have seen opportunities of almost $1 million a year. We have seen opportunities, those are most common, of about $200,000 a year, something like that. Sometimes, the opportunities are in places you would not expect at first, like the cooling system. So it's always a surprise. It's always, you see, okay, what I'm gonna find here, and so you cannot predict, but yeah, you have to analyze everything. As I was saying in the webinar, you have to be very thorough in terms of all the costs, all the components that are in a compressed air system.
And you mentioned energy savings is one of those components as key takeaway for doing an air audit. The other one you mentioned is reliability.
Yes.
What do you see in factories revolving reliability, and what does an air audit bring in terms of improvement?
Well, it's that's a very complex question to answer, but I will say this. Usually, when customers have problems, they tend to add more compressors. Compressor suppliers are very happy to supply those additional compressors, and there are plants that have far more compressors that they need. And again, still with those units, they have reliability issues. In one of the plants that I worked at about 3 years ago, their main problem was the piping. So they had a lot of compressors, but they were having problems getting the air from the compressors to the point of use. So yeah, reliability can be that. Can be also sometimes a pressure drop can create a shutdown or a partial shutdown. So you have to tackle that in every different way. So uh, sometimes they don't have backup compressors, but they do have additional compressors in other location. So you can always find a way around, and we usually do not recommend additional compressors because the customers don't really need them. But when they do, of course, we will recommend that.
Yeah. So the compressed air system can really impact the reliability of the factory in total. You mentioned shutdown, so that's a real risk factor.
Yes, compressed air is usually a critical supply, and some processes do need compressed air. If compressed air is out, the plant will shut down. Others, not so much, but in general, it is.
Yeah. And hearing those two very important arguments, um, what are then still arguments that you hear from customers for not moving forward with an air audit and for not moving forward with compressed air savings?
One argument that I hear less and less now is there's not much opportunity. So I mean, they haven't measured that, but they assume that there's not much opportunity. And as I said, sometimes we identify savings opportunities from the ancillary systems, such as the cooling system or things like that, that the customer didn't have in the radar. And to be honest, we didn't have in the radar when we started the audit. So it's so unpredictable, and that I wouldn't be able to estimate before the audit how much the savings will be.
Yeah, so it depends actually on the knowledge of the people in the factory and how much they know about the compressed air system and if they see this waste.
Yeah, sometimes they measure a lot of things, but they don't measure compressed air. I mean, the compressed air is usually neglected in many systems. And this time, well, we have customers that measure the energy for the compressors, but they do not know how they're using the air. So you see a lot of waste. They do know how much the air is costing them, but they don't know how much air they're making or how it is used. So they measure the power of the compressor. They don't measure flow or
Yeah.
anything downwards. So it's an incomplete measurement. It's something, but far from what they need.
Okay. And why is it still then today, after so many years of compressed air measurements, and you have 17 years of experience, and still today there are still customers who have no idea what their consumption is actually doing, where air is flowing. Why is that still today?
As I said, sometimes the compressed air is neglected. People say it's not important, or go to other systems like boilers and refrigeration systems or anything before they go to compressed air. And also, sadly, because of poor auditing in the past. I mean, our worst enemy are auditors that do not perform the way they should. Meaning, sometimes an audit is limited to leak detection. So they detect the leaks and they say, okay, I already did that. But they have not done a complete evaluation of the system. or a redesign of the system that could lead to a lot of savings. I mean, so they do the minimum, and they think they already did everything.
Yeah. And can you express in short what a minimum proper audit should include, and also not only in analysis but also maybe in time? And a leak detection could just take 3 days. What if you come into the factory? What does it include?
Well, it depends on how big the factory is. I've been in factories where just to do the piping diagram, it takes almost 2 weeks. And the leak detection could take 4 days sometimes. But in those factories, if you do leak detection, keep in mind that leak detection is just one of the components of air waste. You can be wasting air in so many different ways, and some customers are not aware that they are wasting air. So, for example, applications that should not be used, like cooling, for example. Uh, I have to make a clarification here. Sometimes those applications are needed, but usually the applications I'm talking about right now are wasteful. And I'm talking about component cooling, I'm talking about compressed air cleaning, fluidization, things like that. So
Yeah.
open blowing in general are wasteful applications, but sometimes they're needed. And sometimes it's not apparent what the solution should be, the alternate solution instead of compressed air. So you need to get there, study them, and propose a new scheme. So yeah, that's basically it. There are many wasteful applications. They're not aware of that, and if you do leak studies, it could be 30% of the total waste, or it could be 10% of the total waste, or it could be 50% of the total waste. It depends on the plant. But usually you're leaving a lot of opportunity unaddressed if you do not perform a good, complete audit. A full audit not only includes the demand side, which is leaks and all the other bad applications, so to speak, but also distribution. As I said, sometimes your worst enemy could be the piping itself, and the supply. Sometimes you do have a good distribution, you have good control of how you use the air in general, but if you do not control adequately the compressors, you might have energy waste in there.
And a different question. You have experience around the world. You've done audits in South America, but also in North America and in Europe. Do you see any changes in factories, and especially, of course, in compressed air systems and their savings potentials, and when you do audits?
Yes, there are styles, machine styles. It's like the cars, you know. Usually, you have in the United States, you see generally compressors that run very smoothly, are bigger, sometimes are noisier, um, but they try to smoothen the pressure curve. They have different control system, regulation systems. Many compressors over there have modulation controls, which are designed to basically smoothen the pressure, but not precisely for increasing efficiency. Uh, but you have basically all compressors right now. The latest compressors are migrating towards VFD and unload offload. Some of these customers of these manufacturers in the United States, they have interesting machines that you don't see anywhere else. Very efficient machines, but just a handful, and they're not promoted as they should, because people are falling for VFDs usually. So yeah, there's a difference in terms of efficiency. I think customers both in North America and Europe are more uh, more receptive towards improvements and energy efficiency. But in Latin America, that's also starting to pick up. Actually, there are some regions of Latin America where the power is so expensive that they, as a region, have big awareness of energy efficiency.
Okay. Is there anything in particular that those different regions can learn from each other?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, energy efficiency is always important. It doesn't matter how small the opportunity is. It over time it makes for big numbers. And if you combine that with the reliability gain, I think there's just
It's important for all of us.
yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot go wrong with that.
Yeah. And you already mentioned then in Latin America the awareness for energy savings is now increasing also, of course, with the cost of energy going up. Is there anything else that we can all do as suppliers, as solution providers, to keep on building on this awareness?
Well, actually, the responsibility for us is to provide good audits with good results. So audits that exceed or at least meet the customer expectations and really deliver value. That's what we can do, because the worst thing that can happen is when an audit doesn't meet any good results or doesn't provide any good results. So the customer says, well, what's the difference? So actually, it's our responsibility to act professionally and give results.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe work on our message on that reliability and energy savings
Exactly.
key takeaways. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. But to live up to that, that's what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't deliver,
That's true. That's true. It's an important item indeed. We have to deliver. And in your 17 years of experience, how have you seen the world change in terms of compressed air savings?
there are new technologies. When we started, two-stage machines were relatively new. Now they're commonplace in customers that are energy conscious. VFD has also gained a lot of ground. I insist sometimes VFD is not the best solution. I mean, it's a very fancy machine. It's beautiful and everything, but sometimes VFD is less efficient than a very good multi-machine control system. In a factory that has 10 compressors and is running on 8 compressors, a VFD machine is going to make very little difference, while a control system for all the machines that integrates everything will have a much bigger impact than just a VFD machine.
Yeah, so still today, even though we have more fancy equipment coming up, more energy efficient, you always have to match the supply side to the demand side the best way, and that there's
Exactly,
not just one solution.
and demand reduction is key. I mean, you can have the fanciest compressor room in the world, but if you're wasting a lot of air, it'll still be wasteful.
And
You
how
can have
see
the
it?
most efficient car in the world, but if you drive around the block 10 times, you will most likely uh, spend more gas than what you do if you drive consciously.
Definitely true. And how do you see this awareness for energy savings and the development in compressed air system towards the future?
I think I think it's here to stay. I mean, we have seen in during all the years that we have been in business. At the beginning, it was very hard to go ahead and explain to a customer what we would do and how the savings would help them. And what we are seeing nowadays is customers are coming to us. The thing is, we still need to work in terms of the customers knowing what to expect, because sometimes customers come to us and they say, I want an audit, but they don't quite know what they will get from that, and they wouldn't be able to recognize a good audit from a bad audit, and why a good audit costs twice as much as a standard one or poor one. So if customers are aware, I think they will be doing us and them a big favor because they will know what to expect. They will raise the bar and they will get better results consistently.
And talking about the future and then also maybe present day, we have now, of course, COVID that is changing our world.
Definitely.
How much has your world changed, and how have you adapted your way of working?
Well, for instance, much less travel. So we have to manage with remote monitoring as much as we can. I would like to say we were much better prepared, but we weren't. So in terms of setting up remote monitoring systems, the customers are a little bit reluctant to do that. Or, I mean, we have been working for about 4 months on a customer that wants to install a remote monitoring system. Uh, and we still come and go trying to match the demands. But I think it's getting very structured, and so we will have, I believe, in a couple of months, a good solution for that remote monitoring. Now it takes care of the supply side because you will get all the variables, and having the customer film their compressed air, their compressor room, or definitely with a video call, you can get some information. But the demand side is much different because you have to be there. You have to see how they're using the air and everything. So we can try and get that, but it's quite different from doing yourself. So I believe a remote audit could have between 60 and 70% at the most of the savings that we get with an actual audit, but it's still worth pursuing, you know?
Yeah. And do you see this remote monitoring as here to stay? As you mentioned,
Yes.
you can
Oh,
now do
definitely.
70% remotely without the need to go to the site. I still hear you that the going on site is key to get the most out of the system. But there's
Yeah.
apparently a lot you can do already from your home with the help, of course, of the manufacturing themselves.
Yeah, no, and when remote monitoring becomes a mass, market thing, you can do much better because uh, when customers lose the reluctance, I mean, cease to be reluctant of installing additional equipment, we can much better monitor their systems. I mean, we can have them installing the instruments before the audit, so you have all the system data before the audit, during the audit, after the audit, and after the implementation, and you can keep using that system to verification purposes and measurement in the future. So uh, actually, an audit will benefit greatly from the customer maintaining all the measurement equipment over there, and coming back reporting on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, internal reports, external reports. You can also evaluate their data and provide some insight. So I think it's a great tool, a great opportunity that's being opened right now for remote monitoring,
Yeah,
not only
yeah.
for air, for everything.
So partially doing remotely with the help of the manufacturers, and then partially still in the factory. And what is it then that the people at the manufacturer side, how can they learn themselves in doing this work that they maybe have to do themselves now and possibly in the future?
Yeah, well, the thing here would be for them to, I mean, the first thing is to create a baseline of air consumption on an energy consumption baseline. So once they have that, they know if they are above or below, and they can make better decisions. But definitely they need to install, they need to do a first evaluation to lower the cost, and then adopt that as the baseline and then keep looking at that. But they also need to be trained. So remote training is something that we are also doing for the customers. So that those things combined help. I mean, provide a big help for the customers to evaluate their systems.
Okay, that's all very interesting. I think we've come to the end of this interview. Is there anything else that you want to give to to your customers, to the manufacturers, on how they can improve, or in the audit industry?
Yeah, well, no, customers just, I mean, keep measuring, keep improving, and they are a driver for the results. We have performed audits in plants, and then we have done re-audits several years later. Most plants are going on with the modifications and still in better shape than they were before the first audit. But some plants have come up to the same waste level or something. So it's like when you diet, you lose a lot of weight and then you gain the weight afterwards. It happens to me, I have to say. So uh, the plants have the same effect, and sometimes even 5 years, 6 years after the first audit, after a successful implementation that has provided results during the first couple of years, they come back to the level of waste that an audit can also improve. So, I mean, as much as I like re-auditing plants because it generates business, it's my internal engineering side says it's waste, so it shouldn't be like that.
Should
So
be
if
a
the
continuous
customers
work.
keep, yeah, if the customers keep manage the system, and in order to manage the system, measure that and constantly get the reports and think about why the trends are the are bad or something, they can improve the system. They can correct the course of any problems that arise and get to a better place. I think that's what they should do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Mauricio, for your time
Okay,
today.
it's a
If
pleasure.
anybody in the audience is looking forward now to an audit from CrowsNest, we will just ask us for the contact details, and we're happy to connect you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day.